Can concede, can't you, that the U.S. doesn't have total control over the Strait of Hormuz?
Look, Iran is attempting to hold the world economy hostage and to terrorize their neighbors. They've built up a giant arsenal, so are they causing difficulties in the region? Absolutely. But they have a losing strategy. At the end, that will lead to the collapse of this regime in Iran as their economy gets strangled. But are they causing some difficulties for their neighbors and the world economy? Absolutely. But their ability to cause difficulties are declining. Our ability to escort and bring products out of that region is growing. They have sort of one card, and it's shrinking in size.
That does not sound like total control.
Very long way of saying, no, we don't have total control. Welcome back to Way Too Early. It's 5:30 on the East Coast, 2:30 out west. I'm Laura Barone-Lopez in for AliVitali. And that was Fox News' Bret Baier questioning Energy Secretary Chris Wright on President Trump's repeated claims that the United States has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. Earlier in the show, we went through the mental health concerns for sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, a carrier in the Middle East that has set a modern-day record for most continuous days at sea. It has been involved in the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports and had to defend itself from missile and drone attacks back in April. At that point, the USS Lincoln had been deployed for nearly 5 months, and family members of sailors shared stunning pictures of the food being served amid reports of food shortages on the ship, which the Pentagon denied. Now, 4 months later, there are growing concerns about the well-being of those sailors. We shared the story of a wife of one of those sailors who jumped overboard earlier this month in what she described as a suicide attempt. He was rescued and then medically evacuated off the ship. Yesterday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called reports of mental health issues for sailors, quote, misrepresented. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal has new reporting that the U.S. military is preparing to replace the USS Abraham Lincoln with the USS George Washington. But officials did not give a timeline for when that could happen. Joining us now, retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos. He is an MSNOW national security and intelligence analyst. Mark, thanks for coming in. So just starting with the story about the USS Lincoln, what do you think that says, this very real mental health crisis happening aboard that ship? What does it say about the human toll of this war?
So, Laura, trauma is real. And so we can have a debate on, how tough life really is. These sailors are at war. That means there's going to be some hardships. But the bottom line on all of this is that clearly there's a problem now. There's an issue. You would not have rebuttals from Central Command or from Secretary of Defense Hegseth on this. And plus, let's not forget that members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, are getting involved now. And so this is the way I ultimately think about this. If we ask the men and women of the United States military to go fight for us, we have to give them the best conditions possible. Now, are there going to be hardships? Sure. This is not a vacation in any sense. But the stories and the pictures that we're hearing, it's hard to discount some of this, and so I think But
the secretary is discounting it.
He is, except they're swapping out a carrier, and so and Republicans are upset about this. So I think what you'll see, which is not uncommon in this administration, is denials, but then they're going to do something about it. Because at the end of the day, if we want the men and women of the United States military to fight effectively, you have to give them all the tools to do so. And so and the bottom line, trauma is real. I don't care if you're a soldier in Afghanistan, something I did in Afghanistan. Iraq as a CIA officer, or a sailor on board a ship. Life is hard there. Give them the best tools possible, whether it's accommodations, food, so they're going to be able to fight more effectively. That's the way I think we should look at this.
When we look at the overall state of the war and what the administration says that it's doing now, they're saying we're going to have the strongest economic sanctions, the most economic pressure, combined with a blockade of the strait. The U.S. doesn't have total control. Let's just be real here. But is this so-called new strategy that the administration says they've come up with, is it going to be effective?
So the way I look at this, it's the least worst strategy. It's frankly the only strategy if you kind of operate under the parameters of President Trump does not want to escalate. It's very clear on that. We have a shortage of precision weapons. And so I think that, that idea of massive escalation is off the table. Now, in a vacuum, if you say that we're going to kind of go against the Iranians in this battle of patience in terms of, who's going to get squeezed more, the Iranian economy or, frankly, gas prices, the U.S. economy. In a vacuum, you could see the U.S. kind of pursuing this strategy, possibly to some effect. But there's a big if here, and that's the Iranians. The enemy gets a vote. So if it's actually successful, the Iranians are going to do what? They're going to escalate. They're going to try to climb up that escalatory ladder, attacks, cyber attacks like we saw in Minnesota, attacks on shipping, perhaps more attacks on U.S. bases to get Trump actually then to up the ante as well. So enemy gets a vote. We'll see what happens. And don't forget, there's, 80-plus days to the midterm. So everything has to be seen in the domestic politics realm as well.
No, it definitely does. Yeah, I do want to ask you about this other crazy story that we were talking about before we came on, but it's from the Washington Post. This covert CIA program said to be behind mysterious attacks on the Galapagos Islands, specifically targeting multiple Ecuadorian fishing boats near the Galapagos Islands. They were carried out as a part of this covert program. What do you make of this? The fact that this is happening and the fact that there were some members of the fishing vessel that went missing.
Sure. So, Laura, if you were talking a month ago and you said CIA covert action, I would think, wait, hold on a second, what are we doing here? But there is some substance behind this. Fishermen in this area, and by the way, this is about 70% of the world's cocaine goes through these waters. And fishermen actually do use these waters to transport fuel to the cartel's boats, which then are moving these drugs. And so there's some substance behind this. The thing that is a little strange, of course, is the report itself, and that there were boats that were taken out, then the fishermen were captured, then they were end up being returned later on. I mean, there's a lot of questions that I think Congress has to ask on this. And one of the key parts, too, is, is there a lethal component to this? Is the U.S. actually killing these individuals? If a fisherman is actually transporting drugs, this is a fisherman who's been paid several $1,000s to do so. Is that really part of a lethal kinetic finding? Congress has an oversight role. This is the intelligence committee's their job. Let's see what happens. But, when you think anything can't get stranger, CIA, covert action, Galapagos, here we are.
And I think that those lawmakers are going to be met with some resistance in terms of answering, the administration answering those questions about what exactly they're doing. Retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos, thank you. Still ahead, we'll turn to CNBC for a look at what's driving the day on Wall Street, including a dip in mortgage rates after weeks of spiking. But is there more demand?